What's up, everybody? Rosso with Rosso Reviews here. I'm back at it again with another video, and today we're going to go over my thoughts on The Last Jedi. I'm going to try to keep this to one video, but it might end up being two depending on how long the sections are. So I'm going to first start off with the good parts, like the stuff that I really enjoyed, and then I'm going to go into some of my criticisms and the things that I didn't like. Just so you guys know, spoiler warning, spoilers ahead, we're going full deep into this. I know the DVD just came out yesterday, but the digital version's been out for a while, plus the movie came out in December. So if you're watching this, I'm going to take it as, you know, you've seen it and you're curious as to what I have to say. But if you haven't yet, go check it out. And, you know, if you haven't checked it out yet and you just want to see what I think about it first, just completely know ahead of time. Like, I'm going full spoilers here. I'm going to talk about almost everything that happens in the movie. So you've been warned. So, to start off, I don't know if I really liked this movie or I really hated this movie. It's kind of like in the middle for me. Like, I'd probably say it's like a 3.5 out of 5. Like, there's some stuff that I really, really enjoyed here, and then there's stuff that I really, really didn't like. Like, I was telling a coworker of mine today, you know, that some of my favorite parts in any Star Wars ever are in this movie, and some of my least favorite parts in any Star Wars ever are in this movie. So first off, like the technical stuff, like the way it looked, the way it was shot, the sound effects, everything from a technical filmmaking aspect was fantastic. Right on par with, you know, the new set of Star Wars films that we've been getting, with a good mix of practical effects and a good mix of CGI, where a lot of the time, you know, you can't tell what's real and what's not. And I think that really helps the immersion in these types of movies, and I think it's a far better point than where we're at with the prequels. And you know, these films just look great, you know. The acting was also very, very good. Adam Driver has really proven himself as a villain. Daisy Ridley has really proven herself as a lead. Mark Hamill's performance was good, considering his fundamentally disagreeing with everything that Rian Johnson wanted to do with the character, but he still made Rian Johnson's vision come alive in his performance. So for me, you know, he still did very well. Obviously, I'm in the camp with Mark, though. I disagree with a lot of what he did with Luke, but, you know, that's life. Carrie Fisher was also very, very good in this movie. Unfortunately, it is her last role, but she was very good in it, and, you know, I wish that they were actually able to, like, fully use her in the next one, because I think they were setting up a lot of different things for her to do, and unfortunately, now they have to tackle that. Andy Serkis, his performance of Snoke was fantastic. I loved where they went in terms of how they framed his character, especially with it being mocap like that. They did a lot of up close shots, so you could really see like each and every detail and nuance to his facial expressions, which I think Andy Serkis, as always, does a fantastic job as. Even the supporting cast was really good for me. I really thought Poe, Finn, and even Rose were good. Like, I may have disagreed with some of the things that Rose did fundamentally, but I think Kelly Marie Tran's portrayal of Rose was fantastic. You know what I mean? You got to take her as, basically, she's meeting Finn, her hero, so of course she's going to be a little starstruck, and she's also like a fan of Star Wars. So to me, it's like, if I was cast as a role in Star Wars, like, I would probably give a similar performance where you're just like, I can't believe I'm in this, but let's just, you know, let's have some fun. And I think that the way she portrayed that was fantastic. And honestly, a lot of my problems with the film weren't casting related, weren't acting related, weren't technically related. It's really the direction and, you know, the quote unquote subverting expectations, I think in some cases worked, like I'll get to a little later on, but I'll also get to, you know, where I think it didn't work, and I really think it hurt the film when they tried to subvert some expectations. Story-wise, I really enjoyed the Kylo Ren and Rey scenes. I think that those were good. I think that they definitely built a good connection between the two to really set them up to have to show down in the next one. So, like, you get to see, like, just how similar Kylo Ren and Rey really are. while also seeing the points where they're complete stark contrast of each other, which I think makes for a really interesting hero and villain dynamic. Like, basically, I like to think of like the best villain and hero dynamic would be, the Dark Knight the Joker and Batman. You know what I mean? They're both fighting for very similar things, but it's how they're going about it is different. And you see the similarities in what they want to achieve and the similarities in, their drive to achieve it. But obviously their motives and their actions are what sets them apart and what makes them clash. So I really am excited to see them, show down in the next one and see where J.J. Abrams is able to take that. Also, like, once she left the island, I thought the film was very, very good from there on out. I thought that's obviously not obviously, but in my opinion, were some of the, best scenes in Star Wars. You know what I mean? You had the hyperspace suicide, which I know that's been like super divisive, but I really love the way it was shot. It looks so fucking epic. And you see Haldo basically like, all right, well, I got to take one for the team, and was like, this is the only way I can stop like the rest of these people from dying. And I feel like she probably doesn't even know if it's going to work, but it's the only thing she can do with a ship that doesn't have guns on it. And it's literally the only thing she can do. So she takes that route, and obviously it has some implications. And, I know a lot of people are saying, well, like, why didn't you just do that in the Death Star? Like, why didn't you just do that at this point in time? And it's like, well, first off, I think basically you couldn't have just done that with an X-Wing. Secondly, why are you just going to keep suiciding your ships because now you're losing ships? Like, I felt like it was a very good, like, last-ditch effort, like, very good, last move, like, last resort. I thought that was cool. And I get why people didn't like her character, so I'll get to that later as to, like, how I think you could have easily fixed that in the bad section. The throne room scene was phenomenal. That's one of my favorite scenes, for sure. Probably like top 3, because you get this really interesting confrontation where there's not only tension obviously between Rey and Snoke, but Kylo and Snoke. Like, you see how he treated him earlier, basically like calling him a child in a mask, and how he's so disappointed in his apprentice and this is that. And that really, unfortunately, leads to Snoke's death. And I think you get that, the rule of 2. Like, I know that they're not supposed to be Sith and stuff, but you can definitely see that Kylo Ren wants to be a Sith and wants to, really be Vader and stuff like that. So for him, that's a huge move, because while Vader was able to kill his master, he didn't get to enjoy it afterwards. You know what I mean? He died immediately, and he took so much damage from the Emperor that's his suit was damaged, and he unfortunately passed away. But Kylo Ren now, he's the guy. You know what I mean? Like, Hux tried to be the guy and be the leader of the First Order, but Kylo Ren, he took it over, and I think that was a good move for his character, and especially at this point in where we're at with the story, I think that it sets him up to be the big bad in the third one, and basically, if they wanted to, they could bring in some other thing that, maybe is bigger than Kylo Ren, but I think at this point, it was a good move for him as the character to take out his master and become the Sith. And I hope, we get to see some of the Knights of Ren in the next one, because obviously that was a huge that was a pretty big setup in the first one. Like, oh, he's got the Knights of Ren, he's the master of the Knights of Ren, and then we didn't see them at all. So I'm curious as to like what they're doing, and if they come back, and all that. But I'll get to more of that in the bad stuff. Also, the scene with Yoda and Luke was another one of my favorite. I'd probably put that somewhere in the top 10 favorite scenes, because I think that it really brought back their conversation from Empire Strikes Back. He even mentions like, oh, Skywalker, you're still you're never thinking about the present. You're never where you are, what you're doing. You're always thinking about something else, whether it's the future or the past or whatever it is. Like, you're never living in the present, and that's what's clouding your judgment. And I thought that was a really important scene, and especially when he tells him, like, hey, look at all of our masters. Like, me, Obi-Wan, Mace Windu, he doesn't mention most of them by name, but he makes the inference that, hey, like, masters are gonna fail. Like, just because we're a Jedi master, doesn't mean that we're impervious to failure. You're not an outlier because you failed your student, And I think that whole scene really kind of brought it together with Luke. And I wish that we could have gotten a scene where after that conversation, he's like, all right, you're right, I need to do something. And he goes over to the ledge where we saw his X-Wing in the water, and he raises it up and is able to then, like, maybe somehow puts it back together and goes off and is actually there in person on Crate. And I think that would have really brought Luke as a character full circle. But I also really liked Rey's training scenes. I thought that he provided her with the two good lessons that were in the film. I know the third lesson was in a deleted scene, and that's gotten mixed reviews, but I think the two that we got, I think were cool because she's so eager to learn, and Luke's like trying to slow her down and like, all right, let me show you just a couple of things you need to know, and then you're gonna see it from my side, and then, you know what I mean, and we'll be good. And like the scene when he gives her the first lesson, he tells her to sit out on the rock and reach out, and she like reaches out with her hand, and it's like, and then he like tickles her hand, and it's just like, oh my god, you feel that? That's the Force. Like, that's the time, like, I thought the comedy really, really worked. But a lot of people complained about the comedy. I thought it was probably like 50-50, like 50% of the jokes hit, 50% of them missed, which that's a better batting average than I have personally in life. So I think that, he's probably doing something right there. It's not like Thor Ragnarok where I went back and watched it and I was like, wow, literally every single one of these jokes like hit and nailed. But, Star Wars isn't a comedy. And while it does have comedic relief, it's not a comedy. So I think that some of it worked, some of it didn't, and that was one where I thought it really did work. Also, I thought the origin of Kylo Ren was really strong. Like, the way we were shown Luke's version where, he kind of fluffed it up a little bit and lied, like Obi-Wan lied to him about Vader. And then we got Kylo Ren's version where it's very, very much more extreme, more akin to Anakin talking about, or talking to Obi-Wan on Mustafar. It was more of that, like, very much extreme, very much, I'm not in the wrong, you guys are wrong, I'm the victim here type of mentality. And then you get the truth where, where Luke, you find out it's not Kylo Ren turning evil that is what made Luke, close himself off from the Force. It was actually the fact that he considered, the best option would be to kill his nephew because he saw his future. And I think he felt a little betrayed by the Force there, because it was like, he saw into the future and the Force showed him this stuff, and he might have even thought like the Force pushed him to that. I mean, that's just my own opinion and my own dot connecting, so that's probably not true, but it's sad because a lot of people are saying like, well, that's totally out of Luke's character, but if you're in that same situation, which obviously none of us ever will be, but you know what I mean, if you're in like a very similar situation, regardless of how good you are, you might end up making a wrong choice here and there. And it's interesting to see in a time where it actually has implications on someone that we thought were a paragon of good. I kind of maybe I kind of see it similar to like Ned Stark, where he was built up to be this paragon of good, and then you actually dig deep into it and you find out that, you know, he had to make some choices and did some dishonorable things. And, you know, I think it's the tragedy of Luke Skywalker. You know what I mean? We saw him do the hero's arc in the first 3, and now you get to see the parts that weren't talked about. You know, when Rey says, I grew up on the stories of Luke Skywalker and how amazing you were and this and that. You know what I mean? These are the times you see that, yeah, your heroes aren't what they're all cracked up to be. And you need to learn from their failures and be better. So I thought that, you know, given what was there, I thought that was good. I dug that. I dug that, like, philosophical side of it. Also, I think the lessons that Poe had to learn here were good, because it's not often you see... I know Poe is supposed to be a lead, but he definitely in this film took more of a side role, and I think that it was important for him to learn, you know, you don't always have to blow something up. You don't always have to, you know, go in for the attack. Sometimes running and, you know, gathering back up your strength and finding the right time to strike is a better option than just going at it head first. I thought that was good character development for Poe, but I know some people, again, some people had disagreements about everything in this movie. So this movie, and Star Wars will never make a movie that hits with every single fan. There's always going to be some sweaty in a basement, which I'm in a basement right now, so I guess I don't have room to talk. But you know what I mean. There's always going to be that sweaty in the basement. That's like, yeah, they're wrecking my movie. They're ruining my childhood, man. You know, but I think at the end of the day, you got to do what you got to do. The final battle on Crate, I really thought was awesome as well, because you got to see Luke do that, like, master level shit, like that, like something you would unlock at like level 100 in an RPG, or, you know what I mean, like this epic level of power that we've all wanted to see. You know, I could have done without his last line being "see you around, kid." I thought that those were a little weird, but other than that, I thought the whole force projecting thing was awesome. And then seeing where Rian Johnson actually pulled that from was really fucking cool. I actually want to go back and pick up that book, because I have somewhere, I gotta find it, is the the Book of the Sith, and that actually comes from the Book of the Jedi that came out with that, and there was like a Book of the Bounty Hunter. They were all 3 things that like explain some philosophy backgrounds of Star Wars, and I thought those were really cool. So to see something like that get pulled, like, it's times like those where you're just like, no, yeah, dude, Rian Johnson is totally a fan and totally a Star Wars nerd. But as I'll get into shortly, you know what I mean, there's some bad things that he did story-wise that I really disagreed with. And then lastly, DJ at first was kind of hokey. I still not really a fan of the whole lisp thing, and he's actually come out and said, like, yeah, I totally probably shouldn't have done that. Like, you know what I mean? He went with a decision, he stuck with it, and then was like, yeah, that didn't hit like I wanted it to. But I thought that his lesson to Finn was good. You know, they're in the ship like, oh, you just stole this ship, like, you're a dickhead. And then it's just like, let's see who this guy was selling to. Oh, he was selling to the bad guys. And they're just like, all right, well, now I don't feel as bad that we took his ship. And then it was like, oh, he was selling X-Wings to the good guys. See? You know what I mean? It's not all black and white. And I thought that bringing that gray area in was cool. I just would have liked to see some gray Jedi, but that's okay. Okay, so now I'm going to get into the bad parts. I think story, again, a lot of this is story-wise, and some of it is easily fixable. Whether it's in the next movie or could have been easily fixed with like a line of dialogue or whatever. But first things first, let's just get to the easy stuff and, you know, the easy pick-aparts. So obviously, Leia Mary Poppening herself, through space. That, for me, stopped the movie dead in its tracks. And, I thought it was really cool to get to see Leia using the Force, because it was set up in Jedi that she was Force sensitive and stuff like that. I just think that what she did and when she did it, and then factoring in the unfortunate passing of Carrie Fisher, it really didn't jive. I thought it was really cool that Kylo Ren's got the bridge on lock, and he's struggling with it, and then you get the shot of Leia where you kind of pick up that she obviously knows what's about to happen. She's sensing him through the Force, and him wrestling with it, whether or not he senses her or whatever. I thought the tension of that was really cool. And then the TIE fighter, his wingmen come through. They're the one who fire. You know what I mean? So it's not on him. He didn't kill his mother, but somebody else did. And at first I was like, damn. They said they weren't going to change it, and they did. They subverted my expectations. And I was like, okay, damn. So I felt it hit me the way I would have wanted that to hit me. But then they show her face in space, and I'm like, what in the world is going on? And and then you see the finger move, and I'm like, no, there's no way. And then she just flies herself back, and it's done in some pretty bad CGI, and the whole nine. And I was like, oh damn, it just really didn't jive for me, because now I'm like, okay, well, you saved Leia, but Carrie Fisher's not here to be in episode 9. And I just thought that the way that it all went down was weird. I thought you could have showed Leia doing some epic level 4 stuff like you did Luke, just in a different way. And I just think that it was really... And then you get... Then there's the death of Admiral Akbar in there too, and it's like, damn, man, I guess I'm never going to hear it's a trap ever again. But second obvious thing that I didn't dig was Canto Bight. That's another big thing that a lot of people didn't like, and I think it got a bit preachy at times, and as a side quest, it went in directions that distracted from the main quest, and it just distracted me from what I wanted to see, and took away from the parts that I thought really did work. And then to have something like that just didn't work, really, I don't know, I just didn't like it. And I don't like that, kind of going off that, I don't like where they went with Finn's character. They've turned him, they're really harping on the fact that he was a janitor, and to me, obviously that was something that they did in The Force Awakens, and I disagreed with it then, just like I disagree with it now. But making him a janitor kind of fucks it up for why was he with Kylo Ren on Jakku then? Why would you send a janitor on his first mission? Just say oh, you were a janitor, great, we're actually going to make you combat ready, so now you're going to go with this squad, we're going to go find a map to Luke Skywalker. The most important thing you'd expect you'd send your most elite troops to, and to make Finn a janitor and for him to still be there really, really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And the fact that they keep bringing it back to him being a janitor, it's why? You could have easily just never brought it up again and been fine, and I would have kind of looked over it, but making that the butt of the jokes, I think really, really screwed over Finn as a character. Now, another thing that a lot of people bring up that I also somewhat agree with is Vice Admiral Haldo, Laura Dern's character. And, the way she spoke to Poe and, basically was shitting all over him. And my main thing with her was not telling anybody the plan, but not telling anybody why she wasn't telling anybody the plan. Like, I think they easily could have done something to the effect of, like, you know, when Poe asks her, hey, I want to know what's going on. I want to know the plan. She could have easily, in one sentence, been like, hey, so we think that they're tracking us through light speed. That has never been a thing. Like, this is supposedly brand new tech, but we've never heard of it. We didn't even know that they were working on it. Doesn't it seem far more logical that there's actually a traitor among us that's giving them information? Like, that's why I'm not telling anybody the plan. Like, I think that there's a traitor on the ship, and I'm not telling anybody the plan, so that way the First Order doesn't get what's going on. And then Poe would have easily been like, oh, okay, cool. That makes sense. Like, yeah, I'm bummed that you won't tell me the plan, but I totally get why you're not telling me the plan, and now I'm not gonna mutiny. You know, like, because you can see it through everybody else's faces when she's saying, like, we're gonna stay the current course. Like, all the people flying the ship, like, look, and they're like, we're all gonna die, aren't we? You know what I mean? Like, they're losing hope, and that's kind of what makes Poe's mutiny, like, that much stronger, and why they start hiding things from Holdo. Like, when they send, you know, Finn and Rose off on their side quests, you know what I mean? Like, that's why more people are starting to get in on that, and, like, allowing that to happen, and hiding things, and then, of course, the mutiny later on. And then, like, if you still want there to be tension between Holdo and Poe, you can easily have Poe start to investigate the traitor, like, on his own. Like, oh, okay, yeah, I get what you're saying. You know, I'm gonna go fuck off. But he actually starts, like, investigating the traitor. And, you know, if you want that conflict there, you can have him find stuff that, like, oh shit, like, Holdo might be the traitor. And, like, if Holdo's the traitor, now we're in real trouble. So then you can still have the mutiny if you really want him to mutiny. But, so like I said earlier, Rian Johnson did a lot to subvert expectations. And that was a little buzz phrase that was getting thrown around through this whole movie. And in some cases, like Snoke, as I pointed out before, it worked. Where, you know what I mean, they built him up and was like, oh, he's this big bad, yada, yada, yada. And then, you know, Kylo kills him. I thought that worked. That was a cool twist because I didn't see it coming. I was like, oh, shit, okay. All right, that's where we're going with this. And I was like, oh, cool, like, Kylo Ren's going to turn back to the light side. Well, I wonder what that's going to, you know, what problems that may cause in the next one. And then he's talking to Rey, and he's just like, no, like, me and you, like, we're the two special ones. Like, we're the two Jedi. Like, we could rule this whole place, you know. And he tempts her like Vader tempted Luke, like, you and I can rule the galaxy together. And then you're just like, oh, okay, Kylo Ren's sneaky as fuck. And, you know, I think that makes for a good villain. Where Rian Johnson subverted our expectations, and it didn't work, was Luke tossing the lightsaber over his shoulder. And, like, the way he did it, he, like, picks his hand up and then throws it. And so, like, watching the special features, they did say, like, we didn't do this for laughs. This isn't a gag. This was serious. And you also find out that they tried a bunch of different ways. Like, he's has it in their hands, and he drops it. He throws it off to the side. He throws it forward back to her. And the one that they went with didn't land. Where he just, over the shoulder, you know, looks her dead in the eye. And it just was acted like a gag. And it shouldn't have been. And that just, for something that's where we left off in The Force Awakens. And then we come back to that eventually. For that to have happened that way, really, I was kind of like, oh, like, with it being, like, right in the beginning of the movie, that's when I kind of started getting worried about what was going on. The second time that they subverted expectations that I really didn't like, but I gotta say, like, up front, like, this is a spot where JJ could easily retcon it, and not have to change anything, and I really hope he does. But Rey's parents, for them to be, like, drunk Junkers on Jakku when we saw them leave. You know what I mean? It just there's a lot of questions that it brings up instead of things that it answers. So you have because I get where he's going with it, right? He's trying to say like anybody can be a Jedi, anybody special. Like you don't have to have that mighty Skywalker blood, like as we see with Force Kid at the end of the movie. But it just, to me, it brings up like, okay, well, Rey, we set up in The Force Awakens that Rey was special. Like, the lightsaber called to her specifically. But if she has no connection to the lightsaber because she's not, whether it's a Skywalker or a Kenobi, a Palpatine, like, she's not connected to any of this, then why did the lightsaber call to her? And then why did Ben Kenobi speak to her during her Force vision when she touches the lightsaber? In the novelization of The Force Awakens, and I understand that some people say that it's not truly canon because it wasn't in the movie and stuff like that, so I get that. But Kylo Ren says to her, like, so it is you. Like, he knows her. He knows of her. And then even throughout The Force Awakens, when they were like, oh, there's, the traitor and the droid escaped with a girl, and Kylo Ren's like, what girl? Like, the way he said it, to me, I read it as like, fuck, I know that there's somebody on Jakku that could really fuck a lot of this shit up. And like, so he knew that it just makes no sense that she's nobody. But I will say that it could very easily be that he's lying to her and he's manipulating her because of like when that reveal comes in the movie and stuff. And maybe because she was, I guess, from what I understand, it was he found it in her mind when they were bridged. Just like she gets better with a lightsaber because she finds the training in Kylo Ren's mind when their minds are bridged, which I think is like a really interesting concept. I know there's a lot of people who don't like that, but I think that that's an interesting concept and an interesting part of the Force we haven't seen yet. So, like, obviously, every time we do this, like, there's got to be something new that the Force can do. So I think that's fine. But to me, and I understand, like, I've seen tons of articles that are like, The Last Jedi wasn't bad. It's just these theory crafting fans. And it's just like, well, yeah, what else the fuck are we going to do? Like, we're going to sit here and, like, watch the movie over and over and over again to, like, find little pieces that we missed before and little connections and Easter eggs and stuff like that. Like after The Last Jedi came out, somebody went back and watched Rogue One and found when Jyn is, like, looking for the file for the Death Star, she mentions hyperspace tracking. Like, that's fucking brilliant. You know what I mean? Like, it's so cool that, like, all these little, it's awesome. Like Charlie, the meme of Charlie Day, like, he's like theory crafting, he's like conspiracy theory and shit. I think that's awesome. I do it with Game of Thrones. I do it with Marvel. I do it with Star Wars. I do it with so many things, and it's just so fun. So to say that that's the reason why people didn't like this movie is a fucking cop-out. It's honestly a fucking cop-out. You know what I mean? It's like not listening to what the fans of, like, the movie and the demographic that you want to hit when you make a movie, just to write them off as immature and these neck-bearded bastards in their basements and all this other stuff. And I know I did it earlier, but that's for, like, when people get real weird with their criticism. Like some dude thought that they could make The Last Jedi better by removing all the women. So that's a whole other fucking argument. But I think, like, chalking up the fans' reaction to it is just like, their theories were wrong, I think is complete fucking bullshit and is a complete fucking cop-out. And it really aggravates me that people use that as a fucking excuse. But I mean, it is what it is. People just love to bitch and moan about everything these days. So, in conclusion, guys, thank you for checking out my rants and ravings about The Last Jedi. I know this has been a bit of a long video, but I did want to get this out because Star Wars has been a huge part of my life since I was a kid. and it's really shaped a lot of the way I view the world and stuff like that. And these movies and the storytelling and the overall like basically George Lucas taking the hero's journey and stuff like that. I really enjoy it, and it's really been something that's been there for me. And I've forged great friendships through this and stuff like that. So, Star Wars is one of my favorite, if not my actual favorite, film series of all time. So when these movies come out, I definitely want to do a little bit more and go a little bit extra as a fan. So thank you guys for checking this one out. I think at the end of the day, like I said at the beginning, like 3.5. It wasn't the worst Star Wars movie we've ever gotten, and it's certainly not the best. But like I said, there are bits and pieces that I really enjoyed, and I think that those are some of the building blocks. And honestly, I'm excited to see where Rian Johnson goes in his own trilogy. I know that they've reportedly given him one that he's going to write and most likely direct all three. So for him to be able to own something from start to finish, I think is going to be a much better product. I think the biggest overall complaint I have about what Disney and Kathleen Kennedy are doing right now is they're not writing this as one story. You know what I mean? They're writing one episode at a time. And they might have an outline. I don't know. I'm not cool enough to be in those board meetings, but I think this trilogy could have really benefited from being written, all three episodes together as one story, and then you figure out where you break it apart to end the movies. So I think Rian Johnson having the ability to do that with his own trilogy, I think we're going to get a much better product. And I like that it's not going to be connected to, like, it's going to be in the Star Wars universe, but it's not going to be connected to the Skywalkers. We're going to get something that's completely brand new. As we've seen with, Knights of the Old Republic, those things, they're great. They can be great. And I think sometimes when you're limited to what characters you can put in and how they work and stuff like that, instead of just building something from scratch on your own, there's not as much freedom there. Same thing with the creators of Game of Thrones. Also are getting their own trilogy, which I think has the potential to be really good because they're able to write their own thing for 3 movies. So I think, again, as long as they do it with they write the entire thing and then figure out where to break it up from there, whether it's the Old Republic or it's something totally different, I think we're going to get a good product. I really don't want Star Wars to be milked like it is. I want these movies to stay special. I want them to be an event. As good as the Marvel movies are, and they consistently have been hitting once they hit their stride, I think it works in that aspect where it's not just, say, like a couple of characters that are getting milked. Where, Marvel, they're telling different stories, they're telling them different ways, they're bringing in different talent to do different things. And I think they're really hitting their stride now. I just feel like that model doesn't quite work for Star Wars. And if you guys watch Collider as well, I really agree with Christian Harloff here, where Dave Filoni, the writer of the 2 animated series, the Clone Wars and Rebels that just finished up, if they bring him in to basically be their Kevin Feige in terms of story, leave Kathleen Kennedy to getting the talent. I think that she's a fantastic producer, and she brings in this great talent. Story-wise, I just think that Dave Filoni could do a much better job, and the entire Star Wars universe and what they're doing will benefit from it. So, those are my thoughts, guys. Thanks again for checking this video. Like I said before, I know it's a long one, but some of these videos are going to get a little longer now that I've kind of changed my setup and it's a little easier to make videos. But either way, guys, this has been Rasa reviews on The Last Jedi. So, Rasso, signing off.